Alright, well, we're still coloring here on the letter D, it looks like. So we're going to keep on it. And this project is starting to look pretty good. I'm going to go over to the blue, I suppose. This large area here probably needs to be addressed. And I've got a lot of blue there, so I'll get going on it. This kind of reminds me of the colors of Michigan University here. The yellow and the blue right together in stripes like that. And I'm no big fan of Michigan, but I'm also not a big Ohio State fan either. I know that will shock many of you, but I do like to follow other teams. The University of Cincinnati is worth following. They're interesting. Army and Navy, those are always two entertaining colleges. Air Force Academy has also had some really good teams over the years. So it's, and some of the smaller programs too are kind of Alcorn State, and so some great NFL quarterbacks have come from some of those. But I do like Ohio State's basketball team, and I am quite a enthusiast of that. Okay, I got to go back to the sharpener. Tell you what, we may use up a whole blue pencil before we get done with this, but I think when we're done with this for today, we'll have been working on the project for quite some time. It'll be 4 letters that we got done here today. Maybe get started on the 5th one. And that's normally enough class time to keep most students occupied with the project. And sometimes we actually, really draw and paint together very much the same way as we're doing right now. When we do the painting unit, I assist the students. We draw it on a projection screen, much like you're seeing right now, and then we paint it in together, and so that everybody kind of tries to keep up and get their project done before the 10 days or 11 days in a lot of cases. So not always just 10 days. And there's a lot of, in the physical classroom, it's not a perfect environment either. There's a lot of interruptions. A lot of times phones are ringing constantly. There's a lot of student interaction that we're not really getting right now. Announcements have to come on. People delivering messages and paperwork throughout the day to the classroom, and so these are just part of the functioning of a physical classroom in a brick and mortar building. But when we're doing e-learning, it's kind of isolating in a lot of ways, I believe. And if you're a person that doesn't mind being alone, well, then this can really be a very calming activity for you. If you're a person that thrives on interaction with other people, I'm sure that times like we're experiencing where you're not in your physical classroom can be very stressful, and I totally can relate to that. Alright, being careful along the edge here. I go up the edge, trim it in before I tear my paper all up. And so that's a common problem too, and I know I just bring these things up, it seems at random as we're experiencing them, but that's how I learn these things myself, is that once you get to the edge of the paper, maybe you need to exercise a little more caution, because you can have a nice piece of work and you put a big rip in it. That's hurtful to its beauty. And also that piece of tape that you use to hold it all together with doesn't help much either. So they can be fixed, but it's better not to have to fix it. It's better just to be patient and use just a few tricks. Outthink it when you're working up against the edge. You don't have to sling it into the next county. You can work right up next to the division right there. Alright. Just kind of got to keep on going and try to change the strike of your colored pencil. Keep rolling that thing around in your fingertips. Oh, you could even do little circles, I suppose. That's not something I ever do, but I do see it done. But it kind of goes against the way I do business. So, but I suppose there's some. Oops, I better protect that. There's some value in little circles. Alright, blue. This piece of artwork has a lot of blue in it so far, but I think it's based on what I know about the colors in this. It's going to be pretty well balanced out by the end of it. So, and see, you may have to make yourself a worksheet in order for people to know what this says, because you give them the worksheet and then they can sit there and decode it, and they won't just say, hey, that's a neat piece of artwork. You know, you'll say, well, it spells something out, and they'll say, what does it spell? And you can give them the worksheet, and they'll have to interact with your artwork. It could take them several minutes to figure out what it says. And that's good, because you can get people to look at your artwork for several minutes. That's a huge achievement. Okay, it looks like my corner here is starting to curl up a bit. And that's usually a sign that you're really coloring it opaquely. And you're putting so much pressure on the paper that it's starting to stretch it. And that's what causes it to kind of curl up on the edges. Now, that's not a problem. It can always be kind of, you know, at a later time, kind of rolled inside out a bit to kind of uncurl it. But a lot of people, that's the mark of somebody that's really coloring opaquely. And I'm going to carefully just tape it down here, but I'm going to finish this blue first. This is starting to look great. I'm looking for some places I may have skipped. Don't see too many. Yeah, that's looking fantastic. Alright, well, this has always been a good project. So I think we'll try to finish this up and get started on another letter today, and that should be enough for one class session, at least I'm thinking. So I'm taking just the tiniest scrap of tape right here. Right now I'm going to just try to gently, see, I like to touch it up a little bit so it's not so sticky. So if you always touch your tape up, it'll do the job to hold it down, but it won't, you know, it'll be easy to remove. And I'm going to just carefully on that little corner right there. Hopefully I'll get that out of here in just a minute. Alright, I'm going to have to go back and sharpen up my yellow again. Nice working point, you know, not too pointy, and just one that will keep us working here. And we're going to cover, this is high risk because it's all corner, and we have to be very careful when we're coloring it that way. I think I'm going to cover this up and use my hand this direction. So I'm just trying to hold that paper down with my non-dominant hand because it's starting to curl on me, and I don't want to tear it. And see, there's a lot of opportunity right here to mess up. And so this is where the careful, patient person will excel, and the person who is impulsive and impatient and reactive, you know, that's where they'll tear a hole in their paper or fold it over or crease it or something like that. And so it's better to be patient, do a good job on time, than it is to get all crazy and end up with a tore up piece of work. And especially if you've really put a lot of time into it. And although a lot of times the students don't notice it, the time goes by very quickly when you're making artwork. And if you're serious about it, the deadlines are always too short, it seems like. So when we start getting close to the end of a project, that means we'll be having a quiz soon. And I'll start saying things like, hey, the quiz will be in a few days, and if you need to check your notes, because if you don't have good notes, those quizzes are really difficult. So I'll start saying things like, you better check your notes, and I do that for a week, and you know what, on quiz day there's always somebody didn't check their notes, and I don't have a lot of sympathy for them at that point. Alright, let's see if we can get this corner. High risk, feeling confident. confident. Alright. Looking for any little specks of white. Don't see any. Getting a little bit visually fatigued here looking at it. Now let's see if I can get this off of here without having to go back and color any blue. Yeah, it looks like I might have to do a little blue, but I can use this little scrap of tape to hold down the back of my paper so it looks better in the picture. Okay, I am going to address that blue because it offends me when it's not done all the way, but really quick touch-up work right there seems to be fantastic. Alright, now I'm thinking we can get started on one more, and that will be plenty for a session today. And so like we did with the last one, if we grab the red up here, if we go with this, I think we would have to do the yellow first, because if the red snags the yellow, no trouble, but if we snag the red with the yellow, then we'll get orange. Okay, so we're going to have to do the yellow first, right? Yes, the yellow goes first. Okay, so we'll get on that, and that will be enough for one session. We've got to erase this out of here. And I've got a little paintbrush I use to dust these things with. I think it's helpful to try to keep your hands off of your artwork as much as possible. And that really does a great deal to preserve its beauty. Alright, I got this, looks like I still got some yellow left on that, so see if I covered up my layout lines this time. Now up against that black, gotta be careful not to snag the black and smear it into the yellow, but this yellow on yellow is not so much trouble. Risk is not as high. And so this is a project that a lot of people enjoy doing, but it tends to favor the patient mind and the persistent worker. It's also designed to do a lot of things, to strengthen up your hands, to see if you can draw straight lines with rulers, you know, to see if you can spell out an actual message correctly and not skip letters and don't, you know, maybe repeat letters that you didn't need to. That's a common problem in this message. You know, can you logic your way through how to make 5 stripes? Or how about 12 squares? So it's a lot of problem solving and logic, but it's also, you know, communicating too. It's almost it's a visual communications project, and design work is especially well, this is going to be a good spot for us to finish up here for today's session. So I'm just going to continue through this, and then tomorrow, or the next session that is, when we get together, we'll simply try to get 5 more done. If we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the session after that, which would be about the 5th day of coloring, we should be able to finish this and then trim it out, and also go through and clean up and address the white areas, which shouldn't take too long. So we've got about 2 more sessions, it looks like, on this particular project if the production rate stays pretty on task, and it seems like it's been that way, at least for me. Now I know I'm here at home, and so are you, and so sometimes our production rate can go faster or slower depending on what our outside distractions are. But at this point, you know, I'm staying pretty focused, and I hope you are too. And staring at these colors for long periods of time will kind of affect your vision a little bit. So you got to step back every once in a while and take a break from it and look at it from a distance. Right now I'm looking at it from a distance of about 12 inches, maybe 16 inches at the most. And so that's pretty close contact with your work, and it helps a lot of times simply to just, you know, get up from it and step away from it and see what you can see. And I can see that there's still some of my layout work showing through my yellows, so I'm going to have to practice what I preach when it comes to erasing things. So that looks like that's going to be a good place to leave off for today. I'm going to go ahead and make a mark. Well, no, I guess I won't, because we haven't quite finished these out. So, but I'll know where we left off, and I think you all will too. So let's take a look at what has happened here over the last couple of sessions. And you know, it looks to me like we've got a piece of artwork on its way to being created. So we'll get together in the next session and we'll continue to make progress. I think 2 more sessions we might be done with this. Thanks. Well, we're continuing on with our 6th grade design project. We're using a Navy flag language that we've talked about many times, that is representing letters of the alphabet, and we're simply spelling out the message: all people are created equal. And we've made really good progress in the course of a few days here. We've been able to, if you've been keeping up with the instruction, get through a great deal of this. 4.5, maybe 5 squares a day is what you have to finish in order to finish it on time. And each of the projects goes 10 or 11 days, you know, depending on how the class makes progress. So we're trying to do this just the same way we would if you were in a physical classroom. And so that would be, you know, getting out your materials and getting started on your project and staying focused on it until you eventually get it done, or, you know, sometimes you run out of time. But in this case, we're going to pick up with the letter R. Ironically, in the last time we were together, the letter R was the first one we started off with. This time we got a little bit of a head start on it. So it's going to require the use of our red colored pencil there, and I've got my little cup to put my shavings into so it doesn't end up all on the floor here. And if we were in a physical classroom, in my classroom, the art room at Warner, then you would have a small cup like that at each of your desks. I get to get my shield out, make sure it's not filthy. I'm going to start in this corner so I can try to stay away from things, but we're starting with a high-risk operation here when we do this, because it's bounded on all 4 sides by a color, so it takes a little more concentration, although not in the very middle of it all, I suppose. So opacity, you know, it's much easier if you're coloring against a hard surface. If you're coloring against a soft surface like a folder or a tablecloth or some other, the front of a binder, it really just doesn't give you that smooth finished opaque surface that you get if you put it against something that's really pretty solid. But it needs to be smooth as well, so if it's not smooth, what will happen is it'll pick up that texture from behind it. And that's not a bad thing if that's what you want to happen. However, in most work like this, we're trying to get one uniform, even color. And just that ability to control the darkness and the lightness of color and its opacity or its transparency is very important, not just in projects like what we're doing here in the 6th grade, but in more advanced projects that you'll encounter in your development if you stay in visual art, either as simply a hobby or a pastime, or as something you would consider as a professional career. So this is going pretty good. Now when you have these 2 colors that are, you know, different colors, sometimes if you're confident you can tuck them right up next to each other. But if you're not, then you should leave a tiny microscopic space in between them if you can do that, because, man, just that getting any of that black into the yellow or into any of the other pure colors really affects the saturation, how red it appears to be. And it's noticeable when it's near other reds that are unpolluted. Simply need to be careful about what you're doing. Okay, I think I got that tucked in that corner there nicely. And I'm going back and just trying to dress up any little skip overs I've got there. And see if you just kind of try to finish it as you go rather than run back and try to finish it, it's going to work out a lot better for you. You make better progress. Sometimes you have to kind of give up to the idea that you can go fast and get anything good. Although, there is the occasional individual that can. Okay. Now, strangely, I've got a little smudge there that is driving me crazy. Somehow I got it into my yellow. I'm going to try to carefully remove it if I can. This is risky. Sometimes you end up making a bigger mess than you solve, but I think in that case I'm pretty satisfied with the outcome. I'm going to leave that alone, retouch my yellow maybe just a hair. Yeah, I'll have to live with that. Okay, so back to the red. We'll go up to this corner here next. A little bit less risky. It's only bounded on two sides. Now, if you roll your pencil around, because sometimes you'll notice you've left little marks behind in your paper if you press down too hard when you're doing the writing portion of this, like the letters, and your pencil wants to skip over those things. However, if you just keep rolling the pencil around, you'll find that little sharp corner we've talked about previously, and it will fill in those little dents or embossings in the paper. Now, sometimes you can use those embossings in drawings because you want something that you've actually drawn, but maybe not with a pencil, to show up through your coloring, almost like a scratch through in painting. And it's got a very powerful effect sometimes. And so there's uses for these things that typically we would think of as mistakes, but if used, by someone intentionally that knows what they're doing, it can really add a lot of value to a piece of artwork, design, or drawings, or paintings, or sculpture. It doesn't really, it's not limited to one type of media. Okay, right there in that corner, very nicely done. And I may have to sharpen my pencil again here soon. And I think that the progress we're making, it seems to me that each time we come back to this, kind of the pace of the production picks up a little bit. So I think that's just getting into the groove a little bit faster. On the first few days of any project, it is slow, hard work. And then when it starts to come together, you get a little bit more motivated. I've had paintings that I was making just did not. It was a chore just to keep doing them, but they were class projects that I was in. And so I had to keep going. I didn't really have enough time to start all over again, so I just had to keep going with the project I had decided to do. And then eventually it started looking like something that I was interested in continuing to work on. So sometimes at the beginning of a project it just seems like it's so long until it's going to be done that it is just a complete chore. But once it gets underway and you get into the right frame of mind about what you're attempting to do, and you can see where the project itself even wants to go. Sometimes you can't predict where the project itself will go. It just ends up going there, and sometimes that's a good thing, and other times it's a ridiculous idea that blows up in your face, and you have to then, cope with that. So, yeah, that's what makes artwork interesting, is you can't always you can't predict the outcome. And sometimes it's better than you thought it would be, and other times it doesn't work at all. So these are lessons that you learn from doing things just like coloring. Okay, I'm going back and dressing that up. That looks pretty good. It's time to sharpen my pencil back up again. And time is being used productively here. Now, I preach a lot about getting a good working point on your pencil, meaning It's not quite real pointy and sharp, but it's still sharp enough to give you some accuracy when you want to work with it. And I kind of consider this to be a good working point. And as you roll it around in your fingertips, you'll notice it stays pretty sharp on one corner or the other, and you can keep working with it and get accurate markings, and it won't snap off the first time you put it against the paper. This is a little bit less risky work here since it's only bounded on three sides, excuse me. Sometimes you gotta hold your breath and just keep spinning that pencil in your fingers as you keep working your way into the areas where you need more control. You've got to keep that little sharp corner available. And after a while it just becomes a habit that you don't have to think about. But at first, you got to concentrate on it. It's a lot like running. You wouldn't think that there's so much to know about running until you try to run, and then it's really difficult. Alright, progress being made quickly. Now, some of you may be, after a few days of this already, you may be starting to get sore hands, and I can totally understand that. When you're first starting to do real artwork, people, a lot of times there's a misconception that it doesn't require any level of strength or endurance or, you know, problem solving, but it really does. And it's almost like training for any sport event, or if you play music, practicing for that, you have to gain the manual skills, you know, being able to use your hands and your eyes and your mind together and think your way through a lot of your creative problems. Even though one of the most interesting things about being an art person is that sometimes you discover the solutions to your problems while you're making art, and it's a self-reflective activity. And so there's something, I believe, that's perhaps meditative about things like coloring and looking carefully at things that you may be trying to draw or paint. It's very meditative and calming. Going back, I'm looking for any sort of, you know, reflecting back on your work. Here I'm going back to that letter C, still dressing it up because I think it has some flaws. So reflecting back on what you've done is a common practice in the arts as well, so that you can keep yourself on track. Alright, we're making stunning progress here. Moving on to the lower right quadrant here. I hope we don't have any more of these lettered R's. But the messages are meant to be instructive to you and also get you to contemplate something while you're coloring it all out. And then when you've created something that's really attractive and has something meaningful to say, that's a piece of artwork that you're going to want to keep. And you may reflect on this time when we're doing e-learning, or you yourself are maybe just making up work that you missed from previous sessions. And reflect on this and some of the messages that are in this project. If we were in a physical classroom, we would pick out another message of some sort from a list, and in some cases maybe even make one up. I've had numerous students over the years come to me with their own messages, and some of them I have actually incorporated into the list of of phrases that we use for this project. And we would nominate numbers. The phrases all have numbers, of course, and we would nominate them and as a class and then vote on them, narrow it down to 2, and then we would spell that phrase out, whichever one got the most votes in the class. So sometimes they're funny phrases, other times they're deep and meaningful, and other times they just are quotes from the past that have something to say, or someone perhaps that I knew in the past said something very profound, and I memorialize that in these phrases. But they're positive. They make you think about things. Alright, it looks like we're getting here done with the letter R. It seems to be coming in, getting all the nice dress up where, you know, we've got to go back and check for little areas where we didn't have opacity. That looks pretty good. So it seems to me like we're ready to move on to the next letter. Now these should go pretty quick because we got 2 of the exact same thing. The letter Q is just one, I believe. Let's check our chart. The letter Q, is right here. Let's point at it. Okay, is this one right here. And it looks to me like the letter Q is simply solid yellow. And so in the next 3 squares right here, as we move from the left to the right, we'll be using quite a bit of yellow there. So I guess we'll have to make sure we got plenty of that left, and the red and the blue for the letter E as well. So alright, sharpen up your pencil if you have to. I'm starting to think my pencil sharpener is going dull. I'm going to have to break out a new one. Well, maybe not this time. And that will happen periodically. The pencil sharpeners that we use at the physical classroom, they do get dull, and you know, that's just part of making art. You have to use up materials in order to make artwork. Alright, we're going to erase this letter because it's the right thing to do. You don't want it showing through your artwork. Although with a color such as blue, which is kind of dark, probably wouldn't. But it's important just to get into good habits. I'll dust that off. I use a little brush. It keeps me from smearing the artwork with my hand. It also, you know, keeps you. Sometimes people like to try to blow the dust off, and what happens is they end up spitting all over their artwork, and that's kind of destructive to its beauty as well. So, you know, a lot of things go into